name is Gladiator.
If the movie Gladiator starring Russell Crowe isn't a good representation of what we know gladiators to be about, I don't know what is. I'm sure Spartacus on the Starz Channel is a much more realistic take on them, but what really comes to mind when I say gladiator? Why, we think of the Colosseum, we think of chariots in a central dirt arena, we think of decorative helmets and the ferocious great beasts that may lay in wait. Welcome to another episode of Yu-Gi-Oh! Did You Know? Today I will be going over what inspired Gladiator Beasts, but since there are over 20 monsters, I will only be covering the history of those cards used in competitive Glad Beast decks, and the most recently released cards. Now, without further ado, here is Gladiator Beast, Gazaris. Inspired by none other than the Caesar who assisted the events leading up to the fall of the Roman Republic, which would later transition into the Roman Empire, Gladiator Beast Gazaris takes his name after Gaius Julius Caesar. This would also be the same Caesar who would become instantly captivated by the beautiful Cleopatra. Although Julius and Cleopatra would never marry, together they would have a son, but Julius's lust for power and defiance towards the Roman Congress would be his eventual downfall, as he would soon be assassinated before his empire ever began. Enter Gladiator Beast Augustus. After Julius's assassination, Augustus resumes the former Caesar's ambition to form a Roman Empire. Lawfully succeeding Julius, Augustus would become known as the Roman Empire's first Caesar. For 200 years, Augustus's empire would live in an era of Roman peace, or Pax Romana. An interesting fact about Augustus is that since his empire was so large, he felt the need to do something about safety and enforcement of the law. By decree, Augustus would form the very first police and firefighting services. Onward to the gladiators. Bestiarii makes an appearance. Bestiarii were discovered to be no more than a type of gladiator, although this specific type of gladiator was bred to fight as its name suggests, beasts. Bestiarii. This type of battle was highly appreciated by Augustus and encouraged among the skilled to further hone their abilities. Gladiators are not complete without their noble steeds. Gladiator Beast Equeste represents the cavalry-dependent tradition of the Romans. Having been raised in an equestrian family, Augustus felt it was necessary for his newly formed quasi-military group, the Order Equester, to know battle on horseback. Gladiator Beast Neurochius was inspired by none other than the most tyrannical, merciless, and brutal Caesar of them all. Known for persecuting Christians, history tells stories of Nero setting fire to the bodies of Christians as a source of light for his garden in the evening. Facing execution as the enemy of the public, Neurochius committed suicide, ending the Julio-Claudius dynasty. For a king, I was rather disappointed when I found that Darius of Pontus was rather insignificant. Acting as the inspiration for Gladiator Beast Darius, I can only tell you that Darius of Pontus was a prince and was made king through the help of Mark Antony. Representing the paragon of masculinity, Gladiator Beast Hercules was inspired by the greatest mythological hero to have ever existed. Despite Disney's representation of Hera being this loving and doting mother to her baby boy Hercules, Disney could not be farther from the truth. Translated, Heracles means ruler of Hera, which is appropriate considering how much Hera disapproved of her husband fathering a son with an earthly mortal woman named Alcmene. Lacari. Like the Bestiarii, Gladiator Beast Lacari is inspired by those gladiator beasts that typically fought with a lasso, whip, or a noose on one hand and a sword at the other. They followed snare tactics, usually capturing their opponent with their lasso, whip, or noose and pulling them in for the kill. Myrmidons are often the first type of gladiators that come to mind, often wearing heavy armor and wielding large shields and weapons. Inspiring gladiator beasts, Myrmillo. The Myrmillo class of gladiators are equipped with signature weapons and armor. Among these are the gladius, the scutum, and the ever so popular manica, the armored sleeve. Bred to fight other gladiators of equaling strength, Myrmidons possessed great amounts of endurance so as to fight, defend, and wield their heavy equipment. Branching from the gladiator class of the Lacarius, Gladiator Beast Retiarii is inspired by a different class of gladiators. Gladiators from the Retiarius class fought with snare tactics, although where the Lacarius utilized lassos, whips, and nooses, the Retiarius fought with nets, often throwing them over their opponents to immobilize them before killing them with a trident. At last we have Gladiator Beasts Secutor. Inspired by the gladiator class of the Secutor, gladiators of this particular class were armored considerably close to those of the Murmillo class, although gladiators of this class were bred to fight the Retiarius. Armor of the Secutor class was smooth so as to avoid fighting with the Retiari nets should they be ensnared. Also, because Secutors were so heavily armored, Secutors had to win quickly or face defeat from exhaustion. All in all, I'm rather pleased Konami has done their homework in making this archetype. Although I wasn't able to cover all the Gladiator Beasts, I hope this was informational. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and if there's an archetype you're interested in learning about, please leave them in the comments below. Until next time, AMG out.